Okay, shalom. As we're just before Purim, so we'll talk a little bit about Simchas Purim. The Talmud tells us that Rava, he says that on Purim you have to get so drunk that you don't know the difference between Amman and Mordechai. And following that halacha that Rava brings in the Gemara, right, in Masechet Megillah, so there's a story. The story reads as follows, that Rabbah and Rabbi Zera, not Rava, not the first guy, but Rabbah, okay, a different guy, and Rabbi Zera, they had a Purim Suda together one year, and they both got drunk. And then, in the middle of the Purim Suda, Rabbah got up and he slaughtered, so according to the simple meaning of the Gemara, he killed Rabbi Zera. And he was very sad, so the next day, what did he do? He davened to Hashem, right? He had killed his buddy at the Purim Suda, and Hashem made a miracle that Rabbi Zera came back to life. And the next year, Rabbah goes to Rabbi Zera and says, hey, let's have our Purim Suda together again, just like last year. And Rabbi Zera, he probably gets a little bit scared because he revokes the invitation. He says, no thank you, Rabbah, because not all the time do miracles occur. Right? Rabbi Zera was basically saying, Rabbah, you're a little bit of a dangerous drunk, and maybe you're going to kill me again, and maybe there's not going to be a miracle that's going to bring me back to life, so I think I'll stay home this year and have my Suda without you. The question is, why does this story appear in the Gemara? The Gemara is not going to just bring a story to entertain us. The Gemara is only going to bring a story in order to teach us something, right? We know that the Gemara is a practical sefer, right? It's a practical halacha or Jewish philosophy, or something's got to be there. For example, we have a Gemara that asks what Aaron HaKohen, what his sons wore during the 8 days of the inauguration of the Beit HaMikdash. And the Gemara answers, okay, and we'll say it in English, we'll paraphrase. The Gemara answers, who cares? Like, what do we care? What's the relevance, right? The Gemara says, Mai dahave have. What happened in the past, happened in the past. We're not concerned with the past, right? The Gemara has to be concerned with the practical now, right? So anything in the Gemara has to teach us something. So what is the story of the murder coming to teach us? So, al regel achas, at first glance, we would think like Rabbeinu Ephraim thought. Rabbeinu Ephraim, he's quoted in the Ran, okay, and in other places, okay, and the Rabbeinu Ephraim, he says that, right, the Rishon, the Rabbeinu Ephraim says that it must be that the story comes after Rava's halacha of getting so drunk that you don't know the difference between Amman and Mordechai, in order to tell us that obviously the halacha is not like Rava. Obviously, right, if we see that what resulted from such extensive alcoholic consumption, right, what happened, that there was a murder that took place. So obviously, Rabbeinu Ephraim says the Gemara is coming, right, with this story to tell us, don't get so drunk, right? Namely, Rava's halacha is uprooted based on what occurred at this tragic Purim Suda with Rabbah killing Rabbi Zera. The Pri Chadash, he quotes the Rabbeinu Ephraim, okay, verbatim, he quotes him, and after the quote, the Pri Chadash says, Ve'ein ze nachon. The Pri Chadash says it's not true. Rabbeinu Ephraim, you think the story is coming to uproot the halacha of getting so drunk on Purim? Not true. The Pri Chadash has a brilliant interpretation of the story, and he continues to explain his understanding of why the story is in the Talmud, right, in our Gemara, and he says that, the Pri Chadash says that we have to look at the story in its entirety. What happened in the entire story, right? Not only was there a murder, but the next year, the invitation was once again extended to Rabbi Zera, and he revoked that invitation. The Pri Chadash says, why did he revoke the invitation? Because he was afraid he'll get killed again. Namely, what do we see? That even after Rabbah killed him the previous year, regardless, nonetheless, what do we see? That the next year, The halacha was still in place. That Rabbah and Rabbi Zera would still have to get drunk. That's what we see, right? And that is why Rabbi Zera revokes the invitation. That is why he revokes the invitation. Oh, yeah. Okay, my wife just walked in. She's a lovely lady. Okay, I got a little sidetracked, but back to Rabbah and Rabbi Zera. Okay, so basically, the Pri Chadasha says you have to look at the story in its entirety. What happens in the story, right? The end of the story, Rabbi Zera comes and revokes the invitation. Namely, that even though the year before there had been a tragic murder at the Purim Suda, we see that the halacha of getting very drunk still stood, that it wasn't uprooted, right? And that's why Rabbi Zera says, no thank you, Rabbah, we'll still have to both get drunk together, therefore I am not going to come to your Purim Suda. So the Pri Chadasha says, in actuality, the story is in our Gemara to tell us that regardless of what occurred at this tragic Purim Suda, nonetheless, we still have to follow the dictum, the halacha of Rava, and get very drunk on Purim. Nonetheless, the Pri Chadasha finishes off and says that because in this day and age, the generations are on a very low level, right? The Pri Chadasha says, right, talking approximately a couple hundred years ago, he says that since we're on such a low level in this day and age, so we should rely on the opinion of the Rabbeinu Ephraim, and we should not get too drunk, and through not getting too drunk, we will still do the mitzvah of drinking on Purim, right, because we're doing it l'shem shamayim, so as to not sin. And the Ramah, we'll just conclude with saying the Ramah says you could drink a lot or drink a little, just make sure all your actions on Purim, and mind you, the rest of the year are l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven, and acted appropriately.